Finally, for the first time, President Joe Biden has called out Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Though, of course, not by name and as kindly as possible. Check out this clip.
June should be a month of action on Capitol Hill. I hear all the folks on TV saying, why doesn't Biden get this done? Well, because Biden only has a majority of effectively 4 votes in the House and a tie in the Senate, with 2 members of the Senate who vote more with my Republican friends. But we're not giving up.
How incredibly sad and pathetic. That is the weakest call out I have ever seen anyone do, ever. I mean, doesn't mention them by name, just briefly mentions how, we got 2 Democratic senators who vote more with Republicans, and then goes on and talks about something else. The reason I'm covering this is because it shows maybe there is a glimmer of hope here, a crack in the foundation from which we can work with. Because up until now, Joe Biden has really been, completely in lockstep with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, has not done anything at all to actually fight either of these senators in pushing forward some actual legislation. So just to give you an example of the kind of obstruction that Manchin has done, and I'll get to another clip as well in a minute here of Kyrsten Sinema and her absurdity of defending the filibuster. But just to give you an idea of the kind of obstruction so far, Joe Manchin helped to water down the American Rescue Plan. He helped to lower unemployment checks, cut survival checks from $2,000 to $1,400, voted against putting $15 an hour in that American Rescue Plan. Ostensibly, all of this was done to get Republican votes, yet the American Rescue Plan passed with not a single Republican vote. So Democrats watered down their own bill that they were able to pass through budget reconciliation, only needing the 51 votes. They watered down their own bill for absolutely no reason. Republicans would never do this. They don't do this. They haven't done this. But Democrats capitulate over and over again and never, ever get anything in return. Another example. The most recent example, Senate vote to create an independent inquiry to investigate the January 6th riot on the Capitol. Manchin fought to make sure that was bipartisan, getting Republicans to fill half the seats on that commission. And that vote failed. Again, not getting enough Republicans to actually pass that. They needed 60 votes. They only got, I believe, 54. Kyrsten Sinema didn't even show up for the vote. Unbelievable. And all of this, again, they capitulated, made sure Republicans could get half those seats, and still could not pass that. There is no working with Republicans. If you can't even pass an investigation into the riot on the Capitol, you're not going to get anything else done. So what Joe Biden needs to do is what Bernie Sanders would have done if he became president, what he discussed doing. Biden needs to actually go to West Virginia, go to Arizona, rally voters in each of those states for his legislative agenda, for these big issues. Rally these voters to apply political pressure on their senators. That is the only course of action right now. Because apart from doing that and actually impacting the favorability ratings of these senators in their states, they're not going to change their minds. Manchin and Sinema enjoy appealing to Republicans. They're going to continue doing that unless they see that it's hurting them, hurting their numbers, hurting their support. So Joe Biden needs to actually, kickstart this and attack these Democrats that are in the way. Now, that's what he would do if he actually cared. He's not going to do that because Joe Biden ultimately, he doesn't care about these issues. They could have put the wage increase in the American Rescue Plan by ignoring the parliamentarian. There's no rule saying you have to follow the parliamentarian. I covered all this back then, but they could have already done that. Joe Biden decided, no, we're going to follow the parliamentarian and rip out the wage increase for no reason. So if Biden actually cared about that issue or any other of these other issues, then he would actually work to pass this agenda. Now, let me play for you just the most ridiculous video here of Kyrsten Sinema. This is posted by More Perfect Union. And here is Kyrsten Sinema defending her support of the filibuster.
Well, as folks in Arizona know, I've long been a supporter of the filibuster because it is a tool that protects the democracy of our nation rather than allowing our country to ricochet wildly every 2 to 4 years back and forth between policies. The idea of the filibuster was created by those who came before us, the United States Senate, to create comity and to encourage senators to find bipartisanship and work together. And while there are some who don't believe that bipartisanship is possible, I think that I'm a daily example that bipartisanship is possible. Not just this trip today and tomorrow that John and I are doing, but the work that John and I and many other of my colleagues in both parties do on a regular basis. So to those who say we must make a choice between the filibuster and X, I say this is a false choice. The reality is that when you have a system that's not working effectively, and I would think that most would agree that the Senate's not a particularly well-oiled machine, right? The way to fix that is to change your behavior. Not to eliminate the rules or change the rules, but to change your behavior.
This is some of the most bullshit political speak I have ever heard. The way to change that is to change your behavior? Yeah, change your behavior by changing the rules to actually pass something. Change your behavior to become a productive member of the Senate. I mean, she says here, I'm a daily example of that bipartisanship is possible. What have you done? Have you done anything? This is such an insane defense of the filibuster. She's essentially defending getting nothing done. Republicans just showed you they will not vote for even a inquiry into the riot on the Capitol. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine that was Democratic voters breaking into the Capitol. Do you really think the vote would have went the same way? So when your Republican colleagues won't even vote for that, they're telling you they're not going to vote for anything. Mitch McConnell has already said they're going to oppose 100% of Joe Biden's agenda. Now, she also says here, it protects the democracy of our nation. The filibuster protects the democracy of our nation. Let's get to democracy for a second, and I'll get to the history as well of the filibuster, which of course she completely avoids. But here is the real issue. So currently, Democratic senators represent nearly 40 million more voters than Republican senators. But the Senate is split 50-50, with the Vice President Kamala Harris wielding the tie-breaking vote. So Democratic senators represent 40 million more voters than Republicans. She's defending a system that she's calling democratic that is giving Republicans way more power than they should actually have in a democracy. Now, of course, as I said, she avoided the entire history of the filibuster. Here's the reality of that. It's quite literally a Jim Crow relic. The filibuster, as we know it today, with the ability to impose a de facto supermajority threshold, was forged by self-avowed white supremacist senators during the Jim Crow era for the express purpose of blocking civil rights bills. Don't take it from me. Here is Russell himself referring to Senator Richard Russell, the self-avowed white supremacist and leading defender of the filibuster, testifying in a 1949 Senate hearing that the filibuster debate was really about civil rights. Quote, nobody mentions any other legislation in connection with it. So here you have a white supremacist senator in the 1940s admitting that the filibuster is simply used to block civil rights legislation. And today you have Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin defending the filibuster. Joe Biden has to do a hell of a lot more if he wants to convince us that he actually cares to pass any of his agenda. Because right now he is simply hiding behind these two senators and doing very little to actually fight them. There's voting rights, an infrastructure bill, getting higher wages, student loans. He doesn't even need this. He doesn't even need the Senate. This is why I'm convinced Joe Biden does not care. Because today, through executive order, he can cancel all student loan debt. And he refuses to cancel even a little bit. So knowing that, should help to educate you to realize that this is not simply a Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema issue. This is also clearly a Joe Biden issue.